The Google search engine has become so popular during the last few years that we often use it as a verb now, to Google something. In this episode, we'll give you some ideas on how you can use Google services to improve your English. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, and if you are a new listener, welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm feeling fine, Craig. I'm raring and ready to go, which means I want to get started with this podcast recording right now.
Me too. So first this week, we have a voice message from Marcela from Argentina.
Hi Craig, hi Reza, I'm Marcela from Argentina. Let me tell you, we are on our 110th day of quarantine, and I reckon this is far from over. I know it's too much, however, it seems to be working, at least until now. I try to take advantage of this long time studying English to improve my listening skills with your podcast, of course, and listening to English radios. There are about different topics. My favorite music station is Smooth Radio because they play amazing 80s songs. Although the most useful for me is BBC Radio 4 Extra, where actors and actresses perform dramas or comedies. But I don't get this genre. So I must recognize each character on stage by their voices and accents. Meanwhile, I try to imagine what is happening there. It's tricky, but I'm working on it. By the way, I heard that you have finished your lockdown. Good for you. Now, enjoy the new normal and stay safe. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much, Marcela. That was a really nice message. And by the way, your pronunciation is fantastic. What did you think, Craig?
The same as you. I love the message. It was very clear. We understood everything. And I'm really sorry that it's the thing's not too good in Argentina at the moment with the virus. And you said that we're over our lockdown, that we're not on lockdown anymore. Well, that's true, but there have been fresh outbreaks in Spain recently. An outbreak is brote in Spanish. So we've noticed in parts of Spain that the virus is kind of coming back and we're trying to keep it under control. So it's far from over. We still have a long way to go with this new normal. So I hope you're doing okay over there, Marcela.
Yes, Craig was using your phrase, Marcela, far from over. Very good expression.
Yeah.
And you also said that you thought because our confinement is over, you said good for you. I like that expression as well. Mm-hmm. So although it's not strictly true, it isn't over, that's a good expression anyway. I'll give you an example of how it's not over. Right now, I shouldn't be here. I should be in a little village in Aragon. But because there was an outbreak there, I can't go. So you see, it's far from over here as well, Marcela. It's not quite finished yet.
And I'm pleased that you're using the time and taking advantage of having extra time at home to improve your listening. And you're listening to BBC podcasts and BBC programs. That's fantastic. Did Marcela say she was having trouble finding some of the BBC programs?
I think she said that she couldn't get BBC Radio 4 Extra.
I mean, I'm not in the UK, so I'm in Spain and using the Sounds, BBC Sounds software on a tablet and on the computer, I managed to find BBC Radio 4 Extra. So, Marcela, I've put a link in the show notes to this podcast, and you can find the show notes at inglespodcast.com/323. And there's a link to where you can, I hope, find the BBC Radio 4 Extra that you're looking for. It's bbc.co.uk/sounds, and the link is in the show notes.
Is BBC Sounds different to the BBC iPlayer?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think BBC Sounds came out after the iPlayer.
Yeah.
So it replaced the iPlayer, I think.
Okay.
And it's a very, very nice application on a tablet or a mobile phone. It works very, very well. And it doesn't seem to be affected by which country you're in.
Right.
So if you use BBC Sounds, I think you can use it anywhere in the world.
That's exactly why I asked, because I know that when it was the BBC iPlayer, you definitely couldn't get it outside the UK.
Well, you could, then you couldn't, then you had to pay, and I paid for a month or 2 months, and then they stopped it, and it was very confusing. And now with BBC Sounds, it's much easier, I think, to access different radio programs and podcasts.
Right. We hope that clarifies your doubt, Marcella, and our doubts as well. We've got another voice message, this time from Ines.
Hello, Craig. When we in Spanish say capear la situación, could be similar to cope?
Thank you, Ines, for your question and for getting in touch with us. Capear. I know capear as when the bullfighter uses their cape. Is that right? And then they play with the bull goes into the cape and they turn the cape. So could it mean avoid or something like that? Or play with?
Yes. I know it can mean deceive because, as you say, the bullfighter, when he's playing with the cape, I guess you could translate it as that. Well, according to Google Translate, it is play with the cape, but in the sense of the bullfighting context, not any cape, in the street, just if you play with it. No, what a bullfighter does. So yeah, they're deceiving the bull. So it also means to deceive.
There's also a verb to dodge, D-O-D-G-E, dodge, which kind of means to avoid. For example, if you're going to cross the road, cross the street, and there's lots of cars and lots of traffic, you try to dodge the traffic. So you move in and out of the car in a similar way to a bullfighter dodging the bull. He doesn't want the bull to hit him or her, so he's moving or she's moving away from the bull's horns and dodging the bull. So that's another verb you could use for capear.
And another one, Ines, a word I'm sure you know, weather. But maybe you didn't know that it can be a verb. So to weather something is similar to dodge in a way. It means you just wait and avoid it. Wait till all the trouble's over. For example, to weather a storm. You can also say to ride out the storm. That means you just wait, don't go out into the storm, just be cautious, avoid it, and hopefully then when it's over, you'll be okay.
So those are some translations of capear: to weather, to ride out the storm, to dodge, to play with, and to deceive. However, if you would like more details on cope and how to use cope, Ines, go to episode 317, in which we speak about manage, handle, deal with, and cope. Maybe you'll find that interesting. inglespodcast.com/317.
And just one little final word on pronunciation. Hopefully none of you are confusing cope, C-O-P-E, with cape.
Yeah.
We mentioned the bullfighter playing with the cape, capear, cape, C-A-P-E. So that's the thing that the bullfighter has in his hand. So don't confuse cape, the object, with cope, the verb.
Next, we have a voice message from Alejandro from Colombia, who at the moment is living in Australia.
Hi, Craig and Reza. This is Alejandro again, the guy from Colombia living and studying in Australia. I hope you both are well Also, I hope you are having a good time despite the current situation derived by or derived from, I'm not sure, but let's say derived of the pandemic wide world. Okay, well, first of all, I would like you to know that I already completed my third time listening to all the episodes of your podcast, which means that I have been listening to your show for nearly 1,000 times, which is very good, and I have been enjoying it a lot. Thank you so much for all the information that you share with us. I can say that you are a couple of cracks in the world of teaching English. Thank you guys for everything you have done for us. Okay, today I would like to participate in your show with an opinion from you about the using of Google Translate. So the question is, what do you think about Google Translate? I found it as a good tool in our ways to learning English, but of course, as long as you use it in a reasonable way. I mean, if you, as a learning English, use it all the times for wherever word you need to say, you need to express, of course, this is not a good idea. However, for example, to me, in my work, for example, what I do is write in English a message, an email, using the vocabulary, the grammar, everything I know about English. And after that, if it's absolutely necessary, I will use the Google Translate to confirm, to make sure about the idea I want to express. So also I use another tools as Grammarly and Mac Dictionary, which are a good complement. Okay, what do you think about it? Do you have any special advice or something? Okay, guys, that's it. That's all for now. Thank you so much for everything. Have a good one.
So Alejandro has listened to over 1,000 episodes. That is absolutely amazing, Alejandro. Fantastic.
Wow, Alejandro, thank you so much. We just want to point something out. We haven't recorded 1,000 episodes. He's listened to all our episodes 3 times. That's why he's listened to 1,000 episodes.
And I really like the way he correctly used the present perfect there. He said, I've been listening for a long time. So Alejandro has been listening for a long time. Well done with the present perfect continuous. And present perfect simple, he's listened to more than 1,000 episodes.
If you want to know more about present perfect simple and continuous, we actually spoke about that a long time ago now, Craig. I'm sure Alejandro knows the episode well because he's listened to it 3 times. Episode 18. Imagine that. 18. Wow, this is episode 323. So you can imagine how long ago we recorded episode 18. There we spoke specifically about present perfect, simple and continuous.
So if you're curious and you want to know why in English we say he's listened to more than 1,000 episodes with present perfect simple, and he's been listening for a long time, present perfect continuous, how do we choose between those two verb tenses? Go to inglespodcast.com/18.
I noticed one little mistake you made. I think you made the mistake twice. That's why I'm going to point it out, Alejandro. You confused the word another with other. You spoke about things that you use to help you with your English. So you were speaking about other tools, but you said another tools. The word another is always singular. Think about the word a is all singular, right? So another, singular. So if you're going to use a plural, like tools, then it's just other tools.
Also, Alejandro, at the very beginning of your message, you use the verb derived, but be careful of the pronunciation. It's derived from, which means as a result of. And you spoke about the worldwide pandemic, but I think you mixed the order. I think you said wide world. So it's worldwide, one word, which means global, all over the world. So it's a worldwide pandemic or a global pandemic. So derived from the worldwide pandemic.
Yes, and Craig, there was another thing that Alejandro said, which is, I think, definitely a compliment, but we're not exactly sure what you're saying. But whatever it is, it's definitely a good thing. You said that we are a couple of cracks, and we're not quite sure what you mean, because there could be two interpretations of that, couldn't there, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I assumed immediately that you were using the Irish expression crack, which is spelled C-R-A-I-C, and you'd say, oh, a good crack, which means a good time, lots of fun, very enjoyable.
That's right,
yeah. So maybe you're using it in that respect, but there's also a Spanish use, isn't there?
Yes, and we do use it in English as well. I think you're saying just the Spanish, un crack. So if we are dos cracks, we are two people who are very good at something. Like in English, we use it as an adjective more, don't we? We say, for example, he's a crack rifleman. For example, he can shoot the target from 2 miles away.
Professional, yeah.
So really, really good at something. I thought you were referring to that use of the word crack. I'm not sure.
But whatever Alejandro means, I hope it's positive. So thank you very much for letting us know. And we liked your question asking about Google Translate, but we thought we would look at it more in general and look at different Google services that you can use to improve your English, which of course includes Google Translate. So that's the first thing on our list. Reza, do you use Google Translate? And if you do, what do you think of it?
I do use Google Translate, probably quite often, because I'm always interested in translating words between English and Spanish, but I only use it as a last resort. A last resort means that it's the last option and not the best option that you're going to use. So if there's nothing else, because in my opinion, my own personal opinion, most online dictionaries, including free ones, are better, I think, than Google Translate. What do you reckon, Craig?
I agree with you if you're searching for one word or maybe a phrasal verb. I would use wordreference.com, but anything more than 1 or 2 words, even collocations sometimes, I find Google Translate more powerful, especially if it's a sentence, a phrase, a short text. I know it's not 100% accurate, but I do use it very often when I'm writing Spanish to check that I'm more or less on the same page. I mean, your Spanish is better than mine, so I don't feel very secure sometimes when I'm writing emails. So I might put the English text in Google Translate and click and see what they say the Spanish should be. And then obviously I think with my own experience of speaking Spanish, does that seem okay? Does that sound right? So I do use it as a help, but I don't trust it 100%.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Craig. Yeah, you can't trust it 100%, but it is a very useful tool. It really is.
It is, and especially the speech to text and text to speech, because most people think, oh, you just use it to type in a text or copy and paste a text, and it gives you a text in English or Spanish. Well, it does, but also you can use your voice, which is very useful, and I'll give you a situation in which I used it effectively. I was traveling many years ago in Taiwan, and I don't speak any Mandarin. So we stayed at a bed and breakfast place with people who'd spoken no English, and we needed to communicate. We wanted to ask them what time the bus left, how we could get some food. You need to speak to people. We spoke into Google Translate in English, switched to Mandarin, and Google Translate spoke Mandarin and wrote the text so that they could read it. And we managed to communicate in Mandarin with the people we were staying with. So there's an example where it can be really, really powerful if you can't speak any words of the language you're trying to communicate in.
Yes, I agree with Craig. That's a very good example. Although these voice recognition tools in general, you got to be careful with them. There's many instances of them not handling less common accents so well. Ask anybody from Glasgow, from Scotland, about their use of voice recognition. Less common accents can cause a bit of trouble with not only Google Translate but all voice recognition tools.
Yeah, we'll speak a little bit more about voice recognition later, but it's very, very good practice for your pronunciation. If you're speaking in English and you're not pronouncing correctly, then the voice recognition software will help you to improve your pronunciation so that it understands you and you speak clearly. Moving on to our next item of Google, which is Google Docs. Now, Reza and I use Google Docs to prepare the notes for this podcast. And I think it's a very useful collaborating tool where you can write together on the same document in the cloud. Any comments?
Yes, I totally agree. If it weren't for Google Docs, we'd find it very difficult to produce decent notes for this podcast. As Craig says, we both have complete access to the notes anytime we want on internet. We could even be looking at them at the same time or different times. It doesn't really matter. And anything that one adds stays there automatically for the other to see later. So it is a really good collaborative tool.
And I use Grammarly. I use the free version of Grammarly, not because my grammar's bad in English, but because sometimes I forget a comma or a full stop, or maybe I misspell a word. And Grammarly integrates into many software programs and helps you with your grammar and your spelling and your punctuation. So Grammarly incorporates and goes into Google Docs very nicely. So it sits there, and if you're writing in English, it will help you to improve your grammar, etc. So that's another recommendation. Use the free Grammarly inside your Google Docs.
Another thing which I've just discovered because Craig explained it to me is that Google Docs has a voice to text.
Have you ever tried that? Have you ever
No,
used it?
I didn't know until you told me about it.
It's really, really good. I use it if I'm writing a long text in English. The problem is sometimes the texts I write for work are a mixture of Spanish and English, and then it gets a bit difficult. You have to switch languages. But if you're only using English or only using Spanish, you go to the Google Doc, you click on Tools and Voice Typing, and then you click the microphone. You choose your language and you speak. And as you speak into the microphone, the computer writes the text in Google Docs. Now, this only works with a Chrome browser. So on your phone or on your laptop or desktop, you must use the Chrome browser, and then you can access Google Docs and activate the voice typing. And I find it really quick to dictate into a microphone and have Google type the words for me.
Another very useful use of Google Docs is for text templates. A template is like the standard thing you can apply to anything. I think you would call it un patrón in Spanish. So the text template, for example, for a CV, a curriculum vitae, or application letters, proposals. So you can just use their template and you add your details to it, so it'll be in the correct format and look very professional and standard.
Which also helps you, of course, if you're preparing writings for Cambridge exams. You can go in and see examples of how to write a proposal, how to write an application letter, and obviously that will help you prepare for your exam. And we mentioned Google Docs. There's also, of course, Google Sheets, which is similar to Microsoft Excel. And you can use that for writing vocabulary tables. If you want to practice your verbs, your nouns, your adverbs, your adjectives, put the root word with a preposition, you can create lists of words in Google Sheets and use that as a reference for your study. And the beautiful thing, of course, it's multi-platform. So once you've created your tables and you've got your vocabulary in Google Sheets on your computer at home, if you're outside and you're waiting in a queue or you're traveling somewhere and you have some spare time, you can open your mobile phone, go into Google Docs and revise the words that you've got in your spreadsheets. So it's very, very portable and you can use it in many different places to learn words and improve your English.
Our next tool is one that, of course, you've all heard of, YouTube.
YouTube? What's YouTube? I've never heard of it. Never heard of it. What is it? Is it any good?
Hard to be, you can't really be alive in the world these days and not hear about YouTube. So as you know, YouTube is for watching videos. So it's both visual and it's listening as well. Any tips on using YouTube more effectively, Craig?
Yeah, I'm sure some of you know this, but for those who may not know this, if you go down to CC in the viewer, you can bring up subtitles, or what CC actually stands for is closed captions. Even if there are no subtitles in the video you're watching, Google will give you subtitles if you click on CC at the bottom of the screen. So if you're listening in English and you don't understand something in the video, click on CC and you will get a Google translation. Now, it might not be 100% accurate. However, it will hopefully help you with your comprehension, your understanding of the video you're watching. Of course, this is wonderful if you're listening to a song and you want to know the words, or you're listening to a comedy sketch or an instructional video in English. It will help you understand what you're hearing on the screen. Is there anything else that people may not know about in Google that could be useful for their English?
Yes, something that I did know about, but I often forget to use it, is the playback speed. You don't have to play things at normal speed. So normal speed is 1. You can play things at 0.75, a bit slower, 0.5, so that's half speed, or even 0.25, so you can really slow it down. This, of course, can be very useful if it's a foreign language for you, or if the person speaks really fast and you want to have a better chance of understanding what they're saying.
Some of you may have or may be thinking of buying and getting a home smart speaker by Google, the Google Home Smart Speaker. When you get it, you're probably really tempted to put it into Spanish and speak to it in Spanish, but why not change the language to English? Does it understand your pronunciation? If you ask for the weather, will it understand you're asking for the weather? If you ask, excuse me, hey Google, what time is it? Will it understand your pronunciation? So it can be a really good tool, not only for checking your pronunciation, that it's clear enough, but also for asking for spelling. If you're writing, you can ask Google to spell things for you, and you can ask it all sorts of questions. But to practice your speaking and your listening, change it to English. I used to use a software program for note-taking called Evernote. Although Google has a wonderful free, but let's have free in inverted commas because maybe it's not exactly as free as we think it is. We'll speak about that later. But there's another service from Google called Google Keep, Keep. And that is now my go-to note application software. When I say go-to, I mean I go to it often. I use it every day. I use it frequently. So you take notes in Google Keep. You can put photographs and audio in Google Keep. It's in the cloud, so I use it on my desktop, and immediately I can use it on my mobile phone. If I'm not at home, I can use it as a reference. So I'm finding Google Keep very useful for my day-to-day note-taking and remembering things and information. And why not use it for your English? You could keep websites that are useful for you in Google Keep. You could use infographics, those infographic pictures that help you understand grammar better. Just keep them in a folder in Google Keep. And you can also label your notes so they're easy to find. So you could have present perfect label for one aspect of your English, or phrasal verbs for another aspect of your English, and you can find your notes easily by using the label function.
Another useful app from Google is Google Podcasts. It's for Android phones, but you can install it from the Play Store easily onto your phone. It's a very useful application then for listening to all your favorite podcasts, such as Aprender Inglés con Resi Craig, for example.
Another useful use of Google search is for vocabulary. Say, for example, there's a word and you're not quite sure what it means. Just do a search in Google, an image search, and they say that a picture speaks 1,000 words. You can very clearly see what the word is by looking at the picture. Say, for example, you don't understand safety pin. What's a safety pin? You hear it on a podcast or you see it in a text and you don't know the word. Type it in Google search, click on image, and you can see a picture of a safety pin and you know exactly what it is. On the subject of search as well, if you're not sure of the spelling of a word, the grammar or the collocation of a word, very often when you're typing something in Google search, you get a drop-down menu of suggestions. And I tested this the other day. I wrote in Google, I used go. I used go. Obvious mistake. And then Google, below the box, said, did you mean I used to? So it corrected my search term with the most common searched for collocation. So immediately I remembered that, oh yes, it's not used go, it's used to go. So if you're typing in the Google search box, always look at the menu below because maybe that's helping you to correct your grammar and your spelling in English.
Another useful aspect to Google is their offer of free books. Yes, free books. So there's Google Books. You just go to books.google.com, or there's something which I use quite a lot, which is Google Scholar. It's called Google Scholar, but the address is scholar, scholar.google.com, and that one is specifically for academic purposes. So sometimes I teach academic English, and Google Scholar is particularly useful for that because it only shows results for academic books and papers. Scholar.google.com.
I've never used it. So you use it for academic papers to help students with writing? So do you take examples from there?
Well, I use it myself, and I get them to use it whenever they're doing a reference list or a bibliography, because that's where they're going to get their best sources. So I think most universities these days suggest that just don't bother using ordinary Google at all when it comes to writing, for example, a dissertation or a thesis. You go straight to Google Scholar. You're going to get much better results there.
Interesting. Okay. Speaking of free books, on the Mansion Inglés website, we do have a large selection of free books that are no longer in copyright or under copyright law. So we have them in English and in Spanish translation. Go to mansioningles.com/libros. Have you ever used Google Classroom? Have you heard of it?
No, I hadn't heard of it till researching this podcast. What is it?
Well, I've never used it, but I have heard people speak about it. If you are a teacher, Google Classroom brings together many of the Google services, for example, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides for making presentations, and it integrates Gmail, Google Calendar, and it's kind of a classroom infrastructure that you could use with your students and keep everything under the Google umbrella. So if you are a teacher and you're looking for a system that's completely integrated, connected, and in one place, why not check out Google Classroom? I know many teachers who are using it and are very happy with it. Also, Google Photos we haven't spoken about. Don't know if you know, but if you have photos and you want to keep them in the cloud, Google offers 15 gigabytes of free storage. You can obviously pay for more, but you can keep your photos on Google Cloud, Google Photos, and it also serves as a backup copy. So if you have photos on your phone or in your computer, what's going to happen if your computer crashes or you lose your phone? You lose your photos. If you store them in Google Cloud, Google Photos, then you've got a backup copy, an extra copy, just in case you lose them.
Yes, I think that's very good advice from Craig about the word backup. I wouldn't advise anyone to solely trust important documents or photos to the cloud, but to use it as a backup, because they'll exist as long as Google exists on the cloud. But, nothing's forever. And it seems that Google are going to be around for a long time. Let's hope so. They're very useful. But it might not be forever. So if they cease existing, I guess anything that they have of yours also ceases to exist, particularly if it was free. If it's a premium service that you pay for, there's probably certain guarantees, certain things they have to do. But if it's free, I imagine the small print, the clause that says bad luck, I imagine. So use it as a backup, but don't use it as your only place to store things, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. And one final thing is Google Earth. Now, these days, because of the global pandemic, we're not traveling anywhere, but you can travel with Google Earth and you can play with that. It might not help your English, but it might help to keep you sane and not go crazy staying at home all the time. So Google Earth is a beautiful application for traveling around the world from the comfort of your own home.
And of course, we haven't mentioned it, but it seems so obvious we don't even need to mention it. Google Maps. Where would we be without Google Maps?
Yeah, my Google Maps is in English, and it's very, very funny listening to the American girl or woman trying to pronounce Spanish street names with an American New York accent, and it's hilarious. So you could use the English Google Maps on your GPS and put the speech on, of course, and practice your English and have a laugh at the way Americans and British people badly pronounce Spanish street names. What do you think, Reza? Do you worry about the privacy sacrifices we might be making when we use Google services? Because we've been saying it's free and it doesn't cost any money, but is it really free?
Well, it is financially free, but you could say that everything comes at a cost in life. In fact, we have an expression in English: there's no such thing as a free lunch. Mm-hmm. So someone might apparently invite to pay for your lunch, but is that just because they want you to have that meal and that's it? Or is it because later they're going to ask you a favor, or because they're trying to make a good impression on you? Is it just that they want you to eat well? Probably not. So there's no such thing as a free lunch. So what is the price to pay? In my opinion, it's privacy. Well, my opinion and most people, I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's free, so you don't have to pay any money, but they've got your data. That's what it's all about. Let me give you an example. As you know, in China, the government are very particular about control of the internet. They like to control everything. You basically can't put anything on internet in mainland China that will bother the government. It's just not going to happen. They're going to take it down. So to take something down is to take it off the internet and make it unavailable. You might, if you're good, if you're a hacker or a really, really good IT person, you might manage to get it up there for a few seconds, but someone will soon spot it and take it down. Okay, so that's why Google don't operate in the People's Republic of China. They refuse because they don't want the Chinese government interfering with users' data, which I think is very honorable. I really respect that. However, Google do use your data. They analyze it, they share it, and they may in the future perhaps sell it on to third parties. And the whole point of not operating in mainland China, the government interference, well, Google passes your information on to the American government when they request it. They don't like to. They've publicly said it bothers them, but they still do it. So I don't know, it's kind of ironic really that they don't operate in China for that reason, and yet they use your data anyway. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I do agree with what you're saying, and it's not something I think about, and it's not something that worries me. I know Google are using my data. I only have to search for a mobile phone on Amazon or something, or even speak about a mobile phone, and then the next time I use my computer, there's an advertisement for a mobile phone. So I know they're listening, I know they're watching, I know that they're using my data to sell me things and advertise things to me, and that's how they make their money, and I'm okay with that. Yep. Because I use their services and it doesn't cost me any money. I think it's important to know that, and then you make your own decision. And there's an expression in English to be a trade-off. It's a trade-off. Everything these days seems to be a trade-off. I put that expression in Google Translate and it said compensación. So you give, you take, you make your own decisions. But if you are taking services for free, then there is a price somewhere that you're paying. So everything is a trade-off. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Reza, have we forgotten any Google services or anything that may be useful to the listeners? Alejandro mentioned wordreference.com. I also use SpanishDict.com and a service called Lingui, LINGUEE.com, that gives you examples of use of English and other languages on the internet. What dictionaries do you use online? Do you use Oxford and Cambridge dictionaries? Any thesaurus?
Yes, particularly if it's a tricky word, a difficult word, I'll use at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 different sources to compare. So yeah, Oxford, Cambridge. I think wordreference.com is good as well.
I think it's very good, yeah.
It's very, very good. There's a hell of a lot of information on there. Sometimes Merriam-Webster. Mm-hmm. Collins, those are the ones. But I think on the whole, it's best to compare, because don't think that one dictionary is the best for all areas. It's not. So every dictionary has its strengths and its weaknesses. For example, some are really good for collocations, but they don't give much variety of meanings. Others give lots of meanings, but they don't bother with collocations at all, that type of thing.
And remember that most dictionaries also have an audio clip of the pronunciation of the word you're searching for. So always click on that audio symbol to make sure you're pronouncing the word correctly.
Yes, and I appreciate the very few who bother to give you a clickable option with an Irish or Australian or New Zealand accent. It's nearly always standard British and what they call American, although I'm not quite sure what they mean, because there's at least about 10 accents in America. So it's always standard British and American. You don't really get Australian, Irish, Scottish much, do you?
No, otherwise you'd have 50, 60, 70 different sound files for one word. It gets really confusing. Anyway, we'd love to hear from you as usual. You know, regular listeners know how you can get in touch with us. That is on speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. There you can send us a voice message and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you.
Or you could write to us. You've got Craig. He's Craig at inglespodcast.com, or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're interested in a paid course, there are some available on the Mansion Ingles website. Go to store.mansioningles.net and have a look and see if any of the courses there attract your attention.
As ever, we'd like to thank all of those listening who are helping us through Patreon. If you're interested, have a look. It's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast. And if you donate some money, it can be as little as just $1 a month, you get instant access to recent audio transcriptions. And we're very grateful for the money, because we use the money to pay for the transcriptions. So it's kind of not a vicious circle, the opposite of a vicious circle. What would that be?
A nice circle?
A nice circle, yeah. The more money you give us, the better we can transcribe the audio. So thank you to all of those who voluntarily and very generously donate money. We haven't got time to mention all of you, but we will mention the most recent sponsor who joined this month, which is Pedro Mut.
Thank you, Pedro. And that's it for this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you. We hope you're staying safe and looking after yourselves wherever you are, wherever you're listening from. What's next week, Reza?
Next week's episode is, can hypnosis improve your English?
We've had a question about hypnosis. So please join us next week when we speak about that. Until then, take care. It's goodbye from Reza.
And bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this week's podcast was by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. Also by Admiral Bob. The track was Jazzy Sax, Guitar and Organ at the Club. And also by Martin de Boer. The track was Mixed Pleasures. Licensed under Creative Commons at creativecommons.org.